On October 1st, 1993, Bill Hicks made an appearance on Late Show with David Letterman and delivered some of the best stand-up comedy the world had ever seen. However, David Letterman and the producers at CBS ended up completely cutting Bill's set from the broadcast that night because they saw the edgy material as a liability and unsuitable for their audience.
Like a lot of Christians wear crosses around their necks. Nice sentiment, but you think when Jesus comes back, he's really going to want to look at a cross?
This was a decision that Letterman would come to regret many years later. In the world of comedy, censorship is a huge point of conversation. The world that we live in today is a lot less restricted than it used to be in terms of what it is that network television gatekeepers allow to broadcast on their network. If you're curious about the set that Bill Hicks performed, why it was banned from television, how David Letterman played a huge part in this, and what happened as a result of this decision, then you've come to the right place. I will be discussing all of this in today's video, so if that sounds interesting, let's hop right into it. To begin with, in order to understand why Bill Hicks would be censored in the first place, we need to first take a look at Bill's style on stage and the era in which he became a popular name in the world of stand-up comedy. Bill Hicks began doing stand-up in Houston, Texas at the age of 16 in 1977. Hicks was born right around the time that the counterculture movement was picking up momentum, and two of the biggest comedians at the time who were leading the charge were George Carlin and Richard Pryor. Despite being born in a red state, Houston was one of the more liberal cities in Texas at the time, so Bill Hicks was certainly set up to lean towards the counterculture, and as he developed his comedic voice more and more, he would do exactly that. As he gained more wisdom, he would start to use his comedy as a way to joke about the institutions of power in the country that would lie to people to try and gain more control over them. For example, he commonly targeted pro-lifers, anti-smokers, religious people, and he even went after the military-industrial complex for the way they handled the situation in Waco with David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. Whether you agreed with him or not, this is who Bill Hicks would become on stage, and he would never shy away from voicing his opinion no matter how popular or unpopular it was. However, his early comedic style focused more on observational comedy within the little world, as George Carlin would put it, which was everyday occurrences, friends and family, and real-world observations. His unique personality and natural delivery allowed him to catch the eyes of some very powerful people very early on. His style of comedy would be very attractive to David Letterman, who was the current host behind the desk at NBC's Late Night. Then, David Letterman would give Bill Hicks the opportunity to make his television debut on December 5th, 1984. Bill Hicks would do incredibly well and impress Letterman even more. Bill Hicks would appear 10 more times on Late Night with David Letterman because of how great their relationship was and how much Bill Hicks grew as a performer since his television debut. By all accounts, it seemed like Bill Hicks couldn't miss when he performed for Letterman's audience over the next 9 years. Even as Bill became more politically divisive and opinionated in his act, Dave never shied away from an opportunity to have him on as a guest on the show. Then in August 1993, Letterman would move to CBS and become the host of Late Show, which was a talk show that would compete directly with Jay Leno's Tonight Show. To say that Dave had a lot of corporate pressure would be an understatement. Within just a few weeks of being at CBS, David Letterman would schedule Bill Hicks to perform on October 1st, 1993 for the Late Show studio audience at the Ed Sullivan Theater. The full lineup that night would consist of Andy McDowell, Graham Parker, and Bill Hicks to close out the night. While I'm of the opinion that Bill Hicks never really reached his full potential, what we saw from Bill that night was the best we had ever seen of him stand-up comedy-wise. He was very direct about his opinions while delivering it in a very humorous way, and the crowd felt this way too because there was not a single joke that missed. My favorite joke from the entire set that night was when he talked about how Christians wear crosses around their neck. Just a solid joke and an amazing set all around. It was not an exaggeration to say that Bill Hicks killed it that night. Of course, Bill did his controversial material about Christianity and pro-lifers, but the crowd was laughing in front of him, and he didn't say any words that might have gotten him in trouble with standards and practices, so it seemed like in totality the whole set was a massive success. Moreover, according to The New Yorker, David Letterman greeted Bill Hicks when he got off stage by saying, quote, "Good set, Bill. Always nice to have you drop by with an uplifting message," end quote. And then he signed off by saying, quote, "Bill, enjoy answering your mail for the next few weeks," end quote. It was also reported that David Letterman was laughing and enjoying Bill's set almost the entire time it was happening. Afterwards, when Bill went back to the green room, all the producers and employees of the show were complimenting him, and it seemed once again like it was an all-around slam dunk. Little did we all know, Bill Hicks' Late Show appearance in 1993 would end up being the first comedy act ever censored by CBS. And it would also be the last time Bill Hicks would ever appear on Letterman. Later that night, Bill Hicks would be in the hotel that CBS booked for the appearance when he would receive a call from the executive producer of Late Show with David Letterman named Robert Morton. He would be informed that his appearance on Late Show was not going to be broadcasted. Bill was rightfully confused given the fact that even though he did his edgier material, all of the audience seemed to enjoy it, and it seemed like everybody was complimenting him after the fact. Robert Morton then confirmed that Bill did an excellent job in his set, but that the Office of Standards and Practices at CBS found some of the material was unsuitable for broadcast. When Bill asked for further clarification about what material in particular was questionable, Robert told him basically all of it was a problem, which is so lame to think about because they were obviously jokes being delivered by a comedian. Robert basically told Bill his hands were tied and that they could plan another appearance where he helps Bill edit out some of the hot points of his set. Bill refused to adhere to this because of his artistic integrity, because censoring himself would go completely against his wishes, and he insisted that they were just jokes and that there should be no issue. Robert got really angry at Bill and said, "You just don't understand our audience," to which Bill replied something that was so incredibly articulate that immediately shut him down. Bill said, quote, your audience is comprised of people, right? Well, I understand people, being one myself. People are who I play with every night, Bob. We get along just fine. We taped the show at 5:30 in the afternoon, and your audience had no problem with the material then. Does your audience become overly sensitive between the hours of 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m.? And by the way, Bob, when I'm not performing on your show, I'm a member of the audience of your show. Are you saying my material is not suitable for me? This doesn't make any sense. Why do you underestimate the intelligence of your audience?" End quote. Incredibly well said. Bill was a veteran road comedian who would do this type of material in pretty much every state across the country, blue or red, it didn't matter. And Robert Morton doesn't have that type of experience interacting with real fucking people. Robert just reiterated there's nothing he can do, but suggested another appearance in the future to make it up to him. Little did he know, Bill was slowly dying of pancreatic cancer and had very little time left on the planet. So Bill left New York City with nothing, and he was told it was all because of the Office of Standards and Practices. It turns out this was another lie. The decision to censor Bill Hicks ended up actually being that of David Letterman and his producers. According to Bill, this 12th appearance on Letterman got him more buzz than all 11 of his previous appearances combined, because of the whole censorship ordeal, which brought some negative press to CBS. Of course, Bill was incredibly disappointed with this decision, and he actually went on to talk about this and say, quote, "Comedy in the States has been totally gutted. He told me when we'd settled into the dressing room, it's commercialized, they don't have people on TV who have points of view, because that defies the status quo, and we can't have that in the totalitarian mind control government that runs the fucking airwaves. I can't get a shot there. I get David Letterman a lot. I love Letterman, but every time I go on, we have tiffs over material. They love me, but as people have this fictitious mainstream audience they think they play to, it's untrue. It doesn't exist. I like doing the show, but it's almost like working a puzzle. How can I be me in the context of doing this material? The best thing I do is make connections. I connect everything. It's hard to do that in 6 minutes." While it didn't seem that Dave went out of his way to censor Bill Hicks, it's also incredibly apparent that Dave did not go to bat for Bill at all and basically just let the producers run the show. Someone like Conan or Johnny Carson might have done something completely different where they put their neck out for somebody, but that did not happen in this case. Unfortunately for Bill, he would lose his life just 4 months later to the cancer he had been battling. It's heartbreaking to think that the last thing Bill ever remembered about his old friend David Letterman was that he and Late Show producers censored his act and weren't upfront and honest about the entire reason why. Bill Hicks would then proceed to go on an interview with Austin Public Access titled Capsy Eyes, where he discussed his frustrations with CBS censoring him and why he felt it was total horseshit.
As far as the Letterman deal went, again, the material I had prepared was approved and reapproved by a segment producer. I performed the show on October 9th, Friday. The show was filmed and taped And when I got back to the hotel, I was given a call by the producer saying we have to excise your entire segment from the show. When I asked him why, he said, CBS, I love this, standards and practices. Don't you love these networks have standards? Yeah, well, what is it, when you're airing beer commercials 24 hours a day with half-naked women with the beer in their crotches? What standards do you have exactly? Anyway, they deemed the material unsuitable for the audience. In other words, here's what they're saying. You are a contemptible herd. You will not be able to comprehend these are jokes or ideas simply. That's all they are. And you, the contemptible herd, must be kept from one man stating his ideas. Because if one man does it, well, that might inspire other people to go, you know what? I have some interesting ideas too, which I've never had confirmed. But I'm not afraid to state them anymore. They want you to be a docile, apathetic herd of consumers, of corporate products. That's what happened on Letterman. No sour grapes on my part. Again, I think it's rather a badge of honor. On the very same stage, Elvis was censored from the waist down. I was censored entirely.
Furthermore, David Letterman would be incredibly saddened by the passing of Bill Hicks, and he would be even more upset by the fact that the last impression they left on him before his death was an incredibly sour one. However, Dave did the best he could to rectify the situation he created by having Bill Hicks' mother, Mary, on to talk about her son, and in addition to that, they would show the set that Dave and the producers hid from the public almost 16 years ago. Dave would repeatedly apologize and tell Mary how sorry he was that they didn't let Bill's set air, and Mary really appreciated the apology despite the hardship Bill and his family faced from the censorship before his death and how it could obviously never be fully restored. I think Dave did the absolute best he could have possibly done here to right his wrongs. With a career as long as David Letterman, it's really hard to never miss 100% of the time. Obviously, a man makes mistakes and grows, and Letterman happens to be one of those artists who has had a pretty solid track record aside from a few mishaps. It is disappointing to know that Bill Hicks had to deal with censorship when you think about it, because nowadays I would say censorship and this cancel culture is a very small issue and is no longer super present in the world of comedy. We routinely see comedians go on late night talk shows now and make jokes about race, gender, politics, and we also see plenty of comedians who've had issues with networks self-funding and releasing their own comedy specials on YouTube or some other platform. I think some of today's comedians who talk about cancel culture all the time want to compare what they experience today to what Bill Hicks, Lenny Bruce, and George Carlin experienced in the 20th century, but it's pretty fair to say that these eras are radically different, and in today's day and age, you can get away with so much more than you could in the previous era. Anyway, what did you guys think about this? Did you think Bill Hicks' set was funny? Do you think he went too far given the standards of the 90s and standards and practices? Do you think David Letterman should have went to bat for Bill more, or do you think he did everything he could and that it really wouldn't have changed anything either way? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Also, if you're new, make sure to subscribe to the channel and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I also have a Patreon with some bonus content, but all in all, this was the late night set that was banned from television.